There's no better time to save on Tempur-Pedic than during Mattress Firm's Black Friday sale. For a limited time, save up to $600 on select Tempur-Pedic adjustable mattress sets. Plus, get $300 in bonus cash, good toward your choice of sleep accessories. No one has more Tempur-Pedic than Mattress Firm. So don't wait. Take home the most highly recommended bed in America. Feel the comfort of Tempur-Pedic yourself at Mattress Firm.
Offer valid with qualifying purchase. Restrictions apply. Valid at participating locations only. For offer details, visit mattressfirm.com/Tempur-Pedic.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Source Material Comics Podcast. We are heading into what I believe is going to be episode 249. So we are one episode away from 250, I think. Mark, tell our listeners why in the world we are covering Terminator: The Burning Earth tonight.
The spiritual, not sequential sequel to Terminator 2 Judgment Day is upon us. James Cameron is back in the saddle again. Back in the saddle again. Come on, Aerosmith. You with me?
I got you.
All right, moving on. James Cameron has returned to the Terminator franchise to wrest it from Big Dick Buster.
Oh, no, he can't stop himself. Be ready, people.
Bumpy Johnson and Big Dick Buster have had their way with the Terminator franchise since Terminator 3.
That was a dark fate I wasn't expecting, sir.
but James Cameron has rescued it after it was tied to a chair, ass up, face down, and rehabilitated it and raised it back to its former heights, just a bit worse for wear, with Terminator Dark Fate.
Okay, very good.
And then eventually I got there. You did. So in honor of James Cameron's return to the Terminator franchise, we are looking at a trade paperback for a collection of, I believe it was five or six issues from, I think it was the 90s. No. Yeah, it was the 90s, right before Terminator 2 came out. Terminator: The Burning Earth, the comic book sequel to the original Terminator.
The very loose comic book sequel, we will say.
Yeah. And that voice you hear right there, fresh out of Morituri. Well, I don't know if I'm saying that right. I'm going to try better.
Man, you're going to get slammed on the internet, brother.
Morituri. That's what I'm going to call it. Morituri Monday. He is Chris Bailey. Chris Bailey, welcome back to the Source Material Comics Podcast.
Thank you, my brother. They don't let me out of the cage to get into the Source Material Podcast too often, especially after the Alan Moore incident, which apparently I was banned for a little while. But now I'm back. The Canadian office is represented, and we're here ready to talk about some shitty Now comics.
Oh, boy. Now Comics. So this is a company that I have probably bought, I don't know, in my lifetime, maybe 3 comics, and they were probably thrown in a box that I was completely unaware of. I probably got the box at an auction, and oh shit, there's a Now comic. Look at that. So I do remember seeing these comics sitting on the spinner rack, specifically back in the early 90s. I kind of wondered what had happened to them, and I jumped in and did a little bit of research about Now Comics and learned a few things. And it sounds like you yourself, Chris, you kind of looked at like some of the titles that they were covering. Any idea, were you picking up Now Comics at any time? Like, I know that if there was anything I was probably going to get my hands on, it was the real Ghostbusters. That probably looked, if anything, like I would pick up back in the day. That would have probably been it. Were you picking up any of these comics?
Yes, sir. So I pretty well cleaned out the rack every month, whatever I could find. And Now Comics had so many franchises that I loved, from Fright Night to Ghostbusters, Green Hornet. I mean, Mr. T and the T-Force, gentlemen. Who does not want that? They had Ralph Snart, which I think was their own thing, if I'm not mistaken. Rust, which was a crappy painted comic, which was supposed to be good, but I don't think so. And then The Boss itself, the worst comic ever published. In 24 pages, the Now Comics disaster known as 1988's The Terminator. And it is a bag of dicks.
Nice.
To tie that in with our Patreon here, I did a patron exclusive coverage, just probably about 10, 15 minutes on the first issue of that series. Yeah, they were trying to do something there. I could tell you that much. The art was a little bit,
Just say it, Starcher. Say it.
It was a little grating at some points, and I tried my best to describe it, and I'm not the most worldly when it comes to describing art, but it just, man, I can remember seeing these things on the shelves, and the cover, I remember looking at the cover going, man, that cover looks awesome. You crack open, of course, you shared one earlier that was later on down the line in the Terminator series, and boy, that did not look awesome.
No, that was only issue 3. It progressively got worse from there.
Oh my God.
So just for context, anyone who's seen the Terminator 1988 series from Now Comics, issue number 1 has a beautiful painted cover, and it is beautiful. They actually use it for the corner boxes of pretty well every issue from that, because it was the only quality piece of artwork that went through the entire series as it was. But it's amazing, because when you peel back that cover and you dip into page number 1, you are in a different world, my friend. I don't know how to describe it, Jesse. It's like if a 5-year-old had a box of crayons and a photo of a Terminator. This is the result.
Dude, I specifically remember looking at the Terminator that was in that first issue going, this is not what we even got close to in the first movie. Then again, I gave him some wiggle room, because I was like, okay, well, maybe since this is off in the future, we got a different model of a Terminator. Maybe this is an earlier model of a Terminator. I don't know. But either way, it took some, we'll say, maybe they were in a hurry to get that issue done.
Oh, you were being kind. That series is so bad that the artist from this book, Mr. Alex Ross, actually goes on a rampage in the trade paperback version of this book and just trashes the entire company and the art from that original book. It is complete garbage. I don't know how else to say it. Complete garbage.
Mark, you chose Burning Earth. I don't know if you said why. I mean, I understand why we're doing the book, but was this just something that come up on a list and you were like, okay, well, the Burning Earth features Alex Ross, we're going to pick it, or was it something where just a lot of people were saying, check it out?
It was a combination of Eisner Award winner and standalone story.
Okay.
And what I could find in an Amazon search.
I like it. They specifically, I mean, one of the biggest accolades of this comic is that it is the first work of one Alex Ross. Now, Alex Ross has a unbelievable art career ahead of him at this point in time. I've read a little bit there from what you're talking about there, Hero, where he was I think he was doing like work for an ad agency or something.
Yep.
And then he got the phone call from one of his buddies. It's like, hey, you got to check this out. If you want to try comics, you got to try this. And so he's like, oh yeah, I can do this. No problem. And he steps into it and he says he's burnt out by page 2. And I was like, damn, man, he didn't know what he was getting into.
Well, apparently he used like actual paints in the beginning, and they want him to use watercolor, because apparently when you use regular oil paints, it doesn't transfer with the print process properly. So he wasn't familiar with watercolor, and suddenly he had to draw an entire book. And of course, this shit is not bleeding right. It's not, inking properly as he'd want it. And I don't even think he was pleased with his own results. But you know what? For someone's first art, I guarantee you, this is not a bad start. For Now Comics, it's a goddamn miracle.
Yeah, no shit, man. They stumbled upon this guy. And I love reading I was reading the part from, by the way, our creators here. I'm going to just get that out of the way so I can mention this other guy. Terminator: The Burning Earth, first published 1990 by Now Comics. Published as a 5-part story utilizing characters featured in James Cameron's popular film, The Terminator. The story was written by Ron Fortier, is what I'm going to go with. It might be Fortier. And illustrated by Alex Ross. So Ron, he has a little bit of a letter here in the front of this book in the foreword, and he's talking about how he was in the middle of doing this book. He was doing the Terminator series. He is just completely worn out. His intent originally was to go to Now Comics and pitch something to try and bring back the Green Hornet. They oblige his pitch, but they also say, hey, we want you to stick around and we want you to do Terminator. So he's begrudgingly doing Terminator while he's doing Green Hornet. Finally, he gets a call from Now Comics, the publisher. I can't remember who he said called him, but they say, hey, the series is ended. And he says he gets off the phone and he has a yell of jubilation because he's so tired of writing Terminator at this point. And then he gets a call back and they say, well, hey, we need 5 more issues and you've got to wrap it up. You've got to get everything together and finalize this story. And he's like, okay, I could do it. And then, oh, by the way, you've got a new artist that's going to be doing the book. And he mentions some of the troubles he had with the previous artist in that foreword. He says, but by the way, you've got a brand new artist who's never done a comic book before. And I'm like, oh, damn.
Well, I would have said the same thing with Mr. Tony Atkins, who drew the first 1988 Terminator. Tony Atkins, I hope you are unemployed, sir. It is trash. Trash.
So Now Comics started in 1985. I went through the history here. I saw where, it started out as a pretty small company, grew into 100 full-time employees. And I think it closed its doors shortly after this series. Well, I shouldn't say closed its doors. It filed for bankruptcy in the 1990s. Now Comics was a comic book publisher founded in late 1985 by Tony C. Caputo. So he goes out of it at one point, and then in 2003, he comes back, reviving the publisher as Now Media Group. It lasts 3 years, and according to the Wikipedia, Now Comics has been defunct since 2006. So there's your little bit of background on the comic. As you can see, there was just really a bunch of licensing comics. Mr. T and the T-Force, Ghostbusters, Fright Night, Married with Children. So
how do you screw that up? I mean, basically you're a fledgling company. You adopt all these amazing franchises. I mean, you got Ghostbusters. Yeah, you got Speed Racer, Racer X, Astro Boy. I mean, you've got like tons of great like classic anime stuff. You've got Married with Children, for God's sakes, they had. I mean, and the Terminator. Like, how do you screw up the Terminator? Well, this is how you do it right here. They managed. They pulled it off. Nice. Great job.
Did it.
You know what's funny? So I will say that Burning Earth starts out, and of course, they're using no reference. So this is similar to how how the original Marvel Star Wars started. I mean, the guys who was the original artist on that again? I should know this. Howard Chaykin. There you go.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so Chaykin was going by just these, couple photo stills, and basically had to shell out a story because, to do with that. So they're using the original Terminator movie as reference. So that's all they've got to go on with Burning Earth. And I think they did a smash up job. I mean, they even included some Battlestar Galactica Cylons in there.
Cylons.
Just good measure, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's interesting because in 1985, they were already talking about Terminator 2. So I found this old, and I shared it with you guys on Twitter, Star Invaders magazine. So they were actually I remember seeing this on the shelf. I was totally entranced by Terminator because I saw the VHS, one of the first VHS tapes my dad ever rented, and I watched it, and I fell in love with it. So, I mean, seeing this on the shelf and the idea of a female Terminator in Terminator 2, and they were gonna call it, or the proposed title was Revenge of the Terminators. Now, woo, that's deep. That's thinking, boys. But
working title.
Yeah, working title is right. But regardless if they were going to use this or not, it's interesting to see that in Burning Earth they used the female Terminator. So kind of cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's hop into some Terminator here. As the humans continue their unending fight against Skynet and their relentless killing machines called Terminators, John Connor, the man fated to end the war against the machines, is beginning to believe the end is nowhere near. Battle-worn and weary, in a moment of weakness, John almost commits suicide, but is interrupted when some fighters are in trouble. Unable to save them, he is inspired by their resolve to never give up and decides to carry on the fight. Meanwhile, Skynet has made a decision to immediately engage a strategy that involves the deployment of 200,000 nuclear bombs in order to eradicate the remains of the human populace. Discovering Skynet's intent, John's group of rebels put into play a plan to stop the machines as soon as possible by heading to Thunder Mountain and splitting up into 2 groups. Connor's group attacks the main base inside the mountain, while a second group takes out an outside generator. Unfortunately, Skynet was waiting on John's team, and they are ambushed. With some of the group sacrificing themselves, buying them time, John and the rest of the team scale the mountain. When the final day arrives, Skynet has begun bombing large cities. However, the chaotic wind, fire, and destruction created gives John and his team enough of a distraction to get inside the base. Once inside, John's team heads for the CPU in order to destroy it. Encountering some Terminators inside, John is able to battle his way and shoot up the CPU. When John's rope is shot, he lands on the floor to look up and face down the barrel of a gun-wielding Terminator. Bracing for his death, the red eyes of the robot go dark, and Connor realizes they have finally succeeded in shutting down Skynet. All right, there you go. There is your 10-cent synopsis for Terminator: The Burning Earth. We'll start with Mark Radulich. Mark, first off, I mean, you got any? What do you think? What do you think so far? What do you think getting into it? What are your thoughts here?
It's a very simple story. I'm actually surprised how short it was. I read it on my phone at work before reading it on my phone at work made me blind.
Okay, squinty eyes.
Yeah, but that's how short this story is I could actually get through it before I was like, nope, I have a migraine and now need to vomit. Some of the stuff we've done this past year may have also been 5 or 6 issues, but I felt like it took 6 weeks to get through.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, you look at some of this text. I mean, it's really short.
Yeah,
it's really easy to get through. There's like maybe sometimes two dialogue balloons on a page.
It reminded me a little bit of the concept of Rogue One, where you have this sort of suicide mission where probably people aren't going to get through this, but if they're successful, they will have served the greater good against a great evil. You know, as like at this point, trying to preserve life isn't the goal. The goal is to just defeat the enemy at all costs.
Yeah, you need to survive. There is no survival if Skynet wins. I mean,
and that's what works about this story. Again, it's very, very simple. What really sets things in motion when things are looking their darkest is Skynet has decided, well, fuck it, we don't need clean air to breathe.
I would think that 200,000, I'm reading this again, weapons inventory, nuclear stockpile at 200,000 armed units. Because I was like, man, that seems like an awful lot. And then
they're going to carpet bomb the human race with nuclear weapons. Nothing will survive. But, you know, Skynet, again, doesn't need humanity or living things to exist. It just needs to win. Yep. So that made sense to me. You know, that's essentially what's happening here is you're fighting a computer. And so long as it has access to power, like, you know, actual electrical power, who cares? Mm-hmm. I'm actually surprised Skynet didn't try this earlier. Like, you know, like Judgment Day, it gets a hold of the nuclear missiles and just launches all over the world. Like, why didn't you just keep going? You know, or was that all of them? Yeah, you're not really sure. I'm really surprised anyone ever survived in Judgment Day, but nonetheless, the humans are kind of looking at each other and going, well, last stand, either we're successful or we're all dead. There was no getting out of it. It's that bleak. It's that concrete. Either we are successful today, not tomorrow, not a week from now, right now, or we're all dead. Mm-hmm. And so you have the suicide mission where people are willing to sacrifice themselves for the greater good. There's a great sense of urgency and tension against an insurmountable enemy. I mean, when you think about it, Skynet's Terminators don't get tired.
Yeah,
they have no moral compass. They are just death machines. They are flying knives.
That sense of just impending relentless doom was all about what that first movie was. You could not stop that thing.
The funny thing about it is Terminator starts off with the Resistance is about to win the war.
Yes.
Like Skynet, for all of its malevolence and superiority, is about to get blowed up. And so its last-ditch effort is like, well, I clearly underestimated John Connor, so I'll just make sure he never exists. So I'll send this Terminator back. And the funny thing is, and I really feel like the show Terminator: The Sarah Connor Chronicles really captured this. You have a time machine and an endless supply of robots. Send back all of them. Never stop.
Yes, exactly. So she kills one, but could you not just say, like, capture that in a time machine and send back more? I mean, it completely defies description. You kill one and it just ends the entire chain of events. No, Sherry.
I mean, there's a lot more to it, I think, in the sense of I think when they sent back Arnold to kill Sarah, at that point, it's like minutes away from Skynet being disconnected.
Yes.
Someone just reaching back
gotcha.
and pulling out the plug. Arnold's the only one that could go back because there wasn't time to send anyone else back. But you figure if the butterfly effect is a thing, once the Terminator lands back in Los Angeles, then you don't really know what's happening in the far future. At that point, is Skynet on the verge of being blown up? Are things different now? Could there have been more time? Certainly the Sarah Connor Chronicles set up the idea that Skynet suddenly had more time on its hands to send back an endless supply of robots, 2 seasons worth, as a matter of fact. And a girl one, and a this one, and a that one, and really, what didn't they send back? I think they were like dog Terminators at one point. So, my point is that the series doesn't really hold up under scientific scrutiny, but that's not why we're watching this. We're watching this for the action sequences. But just going back to the comic book, just that little encapsulated story that there's no time travel in this. There's just death and the slight sliver of hope. And that's the story.
Yeah. And I mean, it's really bleak there. I mean, John Connor is about to kill himself at one point, which is interesting. And then he's fated to save the world. And then he doesn't pull the trigger. And just by chance.
I was saying, imagine being in his shoes, Everybody you've ever met is dead. The planet is a toxic wasteland. You're fighting a Sega Genesis.
It does what Nintendo don't.
Yeah, exactly. You're fighting a giant Mac computer, It's everywhere you look. There's just like, well, I don't know why I'm going on. Mm-hmm. And I really like that part of it where it's just like, at least if I'm dead, I'm at peace.
That is something that gets across there, is just how long this fight has been, how many times he's got up, run, and it's just no time to rest because you are trying to kill a machine or trying to beat a machine or trying to survive a machine. We are not machines. Humanity is doomed to maybe take a nap every once in a while. It's kind of tough to do that when you've got killer machines on you. So
think of it also this way. What if you win? Now you're burdened with having to repair society. And
yeah.
And you've got toxic water, wasteland of soil, and like 11 people.
There is not a whole lot to be happy about. I mean, other than the fact that, okay, the machines are potentially dead here at the end of this book. That's it. Because
if I woke up tomorrow and everything was toxic and all I had around me was the people I work with in my immediate vicinity, I'd fucking kill myself.
Chris Bailey, tell us your thoughts on the series, whatever you got to talk about here on Terminator Burning Earth.
So, number one, you see John Connor. We get to meet John Connor. Not exactly what I expected when I thought about, all the stories about John Connor from the original Terminator movie. This guy is extremely weather-beaten. He's got the long, straggly white hair. He's been at this a number of years, constantly fighting the machines. He's seeing his friends run over by these giant tanks. People are dying left and right. They're depending on him for everything to lead them to victory. And, he's got a really stupid nickname too, Bear. I hate when they do that. like it took me right out of there. I'm like, no, this is now comics doing this again when they created Sarah's Slammers back in the original. I mean, it's just lame. But the series is extremely simplistic. So basically it's the Terminators attack. John Connor says, we are going to Thunder Mountain to shut them down. Fight. I know. Thunder Mountain. You couldn't come up with anything more original than like a Disney Big Thunder Mountain. That's all I could keep thinking of. They're going to Big Thunder Mountain. So they knock over some Cylons who apparently can't climb a cliff. And Skynet is so powerful that a ragtag group of humans climb a cliff and basically press the off button.
And I have this down in my notes. Like, these guys are climbing cliffs We have problems with the Terminators, climbing behind them. But all these airships that we see throughout the whole book must be doing something else. Like they got a whole bunch of other shit to do. Like they can't just hover up there and start picking them off the cliffside one by one. All right, fine. Maybe the Terminators, maybe Skynet is just a little too overconfident with the fact that, okay, inside Thunder Mountain lie like thousands of Terminators.
I had a major fucking problem with this because why is the computer in the Matrix more heavily guarded than the fucking Skynet?
It's literally a hole in the wall. Literally a hole in the wall. Anyway, so they're climbing a mountain. We learned that the Cylon Terminators, which are literally actually Cylons, in my opinion, can't leave their feet. So they can't climb. They can't do anything. So, our heroes managed to climb up the mountain with their good buddy and another aptly named Now Comics hero named Patch. No, brilliant writing on this one.
What does he have on his eye?
Hey, Patch.
Holy shit.
And of course, they get to the top of the mountain. Now, I mean, this thing is not as heavily guarded as the Pirate Bay, for God's sakes. I mean, this thing is a mountain resource up here. And of course, when they get to the top, they run into it's Cindy Crawford Terminator and her army of Arnold drones.
Wow. So Aurora has like one shining moment in this book when she's doing the training, and then that's it. I was like, oh man, they're going to deploy her. She's going to do some subterfuge. What's going to happen? Oh, we ain't got time for that shit. She's got to kill some people real quick. We got to show it. One of the goofiest fucking kills I've ever seen a Terminator do in my entire life.
The belt?
Yes. That is ridiculous. Like,
at that point, I just wanted to know what Skynet's thinking was. It was like, humans are a horny lot. What if we put a hot girl in the room? They'll all be awestruck by tits, and in that moment we can mow them down. Like, did you really need to be that complicated about it? Mm-hmm. You're fucking killer machines.
Well, it got me watching the first Terminator from front to back with Linda Hamilton. So there you go. It worked on me as a kid.
Mark, you mentioned earlier, why didn't they jump to the nuclear option like first issue out? There is something interesting going on in that first issue of Terminator, the 1988 series, which I assume this is the very end of that series. But there's a point where this guy is like doing some kind of recon mission. A human's doing some recon, right? He stumbles upon this like 1950s, like, those like fake towns in the path of like a nuclear bomb that the army sets up.
Yeah,
so
like a shell town literally shell. Yeah.
Similar to that, except it's filled with living people and Terminators. So the Terminators are trying to, for some fucking reason, I don't know why, because I just read the first issue, but they are trying to coexist and create a human sympathetic race to that could coexist along with the Terminators. So this guy's like walking along, he's in this town and he looks and he sees like cars are going by left and right. People are living happily, and there on the street is a fucking Terminator directing traffic. You're like, what the fuck is going on here? So,
and then they have a chef Terminator and a policeman Terminator, and it is
so essentially it's a town full of visions.
You could probably go that route if you want to say. And then why didn't they do the nuclear option? Maybe something like the reason for that was explored throughout. Now maybe I'm giving them too much credit.
I was gonna say, do you really think Skynet gives a shit about these traitor fucking Terminators making nice with the sissy humans?
I don't think it's traitor. I think it's Skynet actually trying to coexist with humanity at that point.
No, I think Skynet's a devout racist.
Okay, all right then.
Did you see what they did when they pulled the nuclear option? So if you're a fan of the Terminator series, of course, Terminator 3, which I like Terminators 1 through 3. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not bad. And of course, they launched the nukes at the end of that one. So we actually get to see the ramifications of a nuclear launch in this particular one, where they bomb good old Chris Sheen, our good buddy from the Cosmic Treadmill and Morituri Mondays, little cheap plug there. They actually bomb Arizona, where he's from. So Chris is dead.
Yep, Phoenix got blowed up.
No more Cosmic Treadmill, Sheehan.
What do you think of that? Terminator's got you. I'm trying to think of how many bombs they were able to drop off. I can't remember where they said Thunder Mountain was at, but that was like a big part of the
Disney
plot.
World.
Disney World. Like that was a big part of the plot because they dropped the bombs, and because they dropped the bombs, I don't have any idea as to how this happens, but like it creates enough of a distraction where some of the Terminators are like, either trying to deal with the wind and the chaos. I don't know how the humans are able to deal with it better than the Terminators. I would think that that's not the case, but shit's falling everywhere, and some of the team's able to get into the mountain. Again, it's a fucking machine. You'd think they would have figured out, oh, hey, we're going to have to deal with the repercussions of trying to drop 200,000 nuclear bombs. I don't even know if there's going to be an Earth left after that. I would assume they're probably picking targets and they're just going to whatever, but there's a flaw in the logic, to fly in the ointment, if you will.
And basically what they get is when they're climbing up the mountain, the bombs had already dropped. So they're feeling the after effects, and they feel the radiated wind, which is basically killing the Terminators on sight.
How?
And
that's what I don't get. Like, is it how are people able to handle that and the Terminators are not?
I don't know, by God.
I would say, okay, I tell you what, we'll do it this way. Even though it's not spelled out in the book, we'll say electromagnetic pulse.
There you go.
Okay, thank you very much. Now comics, hire me as a writer. Oh shit, you're out of business.
If only they waited for Jesse Starcher. Now comics would still exist.
Yeah, move over, Ron Portier. Here I come. Call me Jesse Starcher.
The overall artwork itself is up and down like a yo-yo. You can see where he used visual references. I mean, Cindy Crawford is obviously the influence for Aurora. He even says himself that he went from using photo reference in the first couple pages to just winging it. And you can really see it because John Connor is a different person almost every single page. Now, he looks great, but, you know, you can't tell John from page 1 to page 24 by the time, you know, it's just so up and down, so inconsistent, which is unusual for Alex Ross. I mean, you can really tell that he's just getting his feet wet here. But much of it, I mean, the Terminators are still beautiful. I mean, just the end Terminator and the end scene. So basically what happens, the entire story is Terminators attack. They got to go to Big Thunder Mountain to shut Skynet down. The bombs are dropped. They just manage to get inside, and they repel inside and shut Skynet off. So the entire book ends with John Connor lying down, and there's a Terminator with a gun pointed on him, and he thinks he's about to die. And of course, at that particular point, Skynet actually decides to shut off. So the Terminators are just waiting there to set, you know, trying to get input, trying to get, you know, what to do next from Skynet, and nothing ever comes. So they're like dead drones standing there. Now their eyes go out, and, you know, they see their power turns off. Yep, go ahead.
Does anyone else think it's hilarious that the Trade Federation and Skynet share the same basic flawed philosophy?
Explain.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Do you know what the Trade Federation is, Jesse?
No, I have no idea.
That's from the Phantom Menace.
Oh, okay. All right, go ahead.
And their whole thing was remote-controlled robots that once you blew up the mothership that was sending out the signal, your monstrous droid army was then shut off.
Maybe they should have combined the two with the Terminator burning Earth, and like when Anakin goes up and blows up shit up in the Phantom Menace. Maybe it happens at the same time.
There you go.
Just to add story purposes. But anyway, they basically shut him down, and there's a cool scene to finish off the book, and it's one of the few that I really, really like about it. Is the Terminator is standing over him. They go dead, go silent. But one of the last panels in the entire book is the Terminator's eye glowing again, which means, you know, we ain't done yet, motherfucker.
Yeah, buddy.
Dun, 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 dun. So one of the things that's been said about the Terminator franchise, and it's something that we've actually talked about on Long Road to Ruin, is that, you know, it's not as such a sci-fi movie as people think it is. And really what it kind of turned into, it's a horror movie. This is essentially the Terminator movie. The original Terminator is a slasher movie. You have your damsel in distress, your Jamie Lee Curtis character and Linda Hamilton. You have your savior character in Kyle Reese, and you have your slasher monster in Arnold, the Terminator.
Exactly.
That was it. That was all it ever meant to. It was ever meant to be. And then it, you know, because of the success of it and the imagination, it like cut loose in people, whatever. It became this other entity. But at the heart of it is this horror slasher story. And that's one of the great things about the end of the. Now I remember what my point was. Now that's one of the great things about the end of the Burning Earth is that little light up there. That's the machete coming up from the ground. That's you know, Freddy pulling mom through the window, you know, in the second Elm Street movie. That's always that last horror trope of the horror monster getting the last kill or the last laugh or the wah-ha-ha, you know, moment right at the end.
I was going to say what we have in this book, though, and Ron Fortier actually mentions in his letter there at the beginning, his foreword, he says that when he was trying to figure out how he was going to write the Terminator books, he went with he couldn't, he knew what he had up against him. He knew what he had to try and write. So he went with an idea for using the book as to tell war stories instead. The reason I'm telling you that is that because this definitely feels like obviously more of a war story. He mentioned Sergeant Rock as being one of his influences. He mentioned a couple other army-related books or military-related books that kind of inspired him and like what the kind of tales he was going to tell. Granted, there's horror in war, but you really don't get the great sense of horror that you do in the films translated into Burning Earth. It feels more like a war story to me than it does something that's scary. Yeah, we have some pretty unstoppable machines we got to take care of, but I mean, my goodness, there wasn't anything in this book that made me go, had me, gasping, kind of like with Sarah Connor as she's trying to get out of the way of the Terminator and the arms coming after her, as he's trying to get through that trash compactor he was stuck in, or the exploding truck and here comes the Terminator. There wasn't any of that. Go ahead.
You know what? Just one thing I'd like to say is that you hit it right on the money. I think a lot of what Now Comics was missing in their Terminator book was actually Terminators. I mean, you got to see tanks, you got to see these crappy Cylon ones, you got to see Cindy Crawford, but you really didn't get to see many Terminators at all. Yeah. And I think it's really bizarre because the entire series only lasted 18 issues originally with Now Comics. And I mean, the amount of actually humans versus Terminators is minimal. Mm-hmm. And I think, if you're making a Terminator movie, a Terminator show, maybe you should have some Terminators. I'm just saying. I don't know. What do you think? What do you think, Radulich?
Well, a couple of things. One, the Terminators are supposed to be a zombie aesthetic. That's why they look like skeletons. So that's one of the things they were going for. Again, the horror motif. They went. It's a play on the zombie horror movie. Essentially, when you break down and deconstruct the original Terminator movie, it's two people trying to survive zombies chasing them. And the zombie aesthetic is essentially these Terminators that look like walking skeletons chasing after you, right? So that's one thing. The other thing is, I think if you're a creative person, you can actually. There was a movie that came out, I think it was last year. It was called Overlord, and it's a war picture, but it's also a horror movie. I didn't see it. I think Winfrey might have seen it, and he might be able to speak to this a little bit more intelligently than I can. But there are absolutely ways you can incorporate a horror aesthetic in a wartime setting. They missed an opportunity to do it with the book, but I think if you tried to interpret the book in a cinematic format, it could absolutely be done. Especially if you really hammer in the trauma of war. Yeah. If you start dealing in like flashbacks and hallucinations, dreams, night terrors, that sort of thing, you can do a lot, I think, with the horror themes without having somebody jingling pots and pans and yelling oogie boogie boogie at you as they come running at you on screen. Yeah. Add that to the bingo card.
Oh yeah, oogie boogie boogie.
Yes, add oogie boogie woogie running at you on screen. But I think that's where Burning Earth is the. Add this to the bingo card. A germ of a good idea that I don't think was really developed into what it could have been. There's potential here. And I think if you're just like, I just want a simple war story, the whole thing feels like the last chapter of a longer story.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So it's like somebody handed you a book and went, just go to chapter 20. It's fine. And you read chapter 20. Go ahead.
Feels like about 10 minutes of a movie. That's what this is.
Right. Yeah. You jump to the last. Yeah, you jump to the last act of the movie. If it's a 90-minute movie, the first 60 minutes are world building and then living in this person. John Connor lives in an interesting world, and when you're having to balance your own anxieties and insecurities and fears and trauma with having to lead other traumatized and scared people against a faceless evil, I think there's a lot to do with that. And you can spend 45 minutes to an hour of a movie dealing with that. And then the last 30 minutes when they realize, well, if we don't go now, we're going to get bombed out of existence, in this Rogue One suicide mission attempt to save the world from certain destruction. And then I think you've got something. And that ultimately is sort of the good and the bad about the Burning Earth. The Burning Earth sort of says, so we're not going to do any of that. We're going to George Lucas this shit, and we're only going to tell you 10 minutes of a story. Okay.
Chris Bailey, tell us your final thoughts here on this book. Anything left unsaid?
Listen, for Now Comics, this is absolute genius, to be quite honest with you. If this is the end of days for Now Comics, this was a good sign-off party for them. Overall, I mean, very, very brief story. Like you said, it's about 10 minutes of a movie. There's really not much going on outside of like one little very, very thin plot point. The art is inconsistent. It's up and down, but it's still pretty damn impressive in different parts. Alex Ross is, just starting to hone his craft here. And, it's pretty rough when you consider the work that this man has done. But, hey, everybody got to start somewhere. And guess what? I bet either of us still can't draw John Connor any better than he can here. So, yeah. But overall, I enjoyed rereading this again. I haven't read this since it originally came out on store shelves. So, it was good to go back. But it was an extremely breezy read. And you know what? For the sake of the podcast, I thought it was a pretty fun ride all the way around. I love Terminator, so yeah. and I love Genesis. I love Terminator Genesis, and I'm not afraid to say it.
One of the things that you guys brought up, you just talked about it for quite a while, is the fact that this was like almost like the last half hour of an action film. And granted, this is supposed to be the last 5 issues of the series. Okay, yeah. But, imagine picking this up off the shelf and this is the only trade paperback of Terminator you've ever read. I can tell you that other than John Connor, if I've seen the movies, I have a little bit of a history and a little bit of rapport with that character. None of these other fucknuts I have I have no emotion with. Like if somebody gets bit by a snake and I'm like, oh, that sucks.
What about Patch?
Patch. Oh, he was unique. Yeah. I mean, it's just, and he's, I don't know. There isn't enough here to make me invested in a lot of the threat that these characters face. I'm just, I'm waiting for some bloodletting to happen. I'm waiting for some Terminators to bite the dust and John Connor to save the day.
Do you think you would have had a different approach if you didn't have to read it all at once? Like if you were waiting for like the next issue, do you think, in other words, if you were reading it monthly instead of all at once, do you think you would have had a different reaction?
If this is supposed to be the end of the series, there were names that were being dropped, like of some of the characters that I think I should have known. So if I was reading this monthly, if I'm starting with the first issue of whatever Burning Earth is, I'm still in the same boat, I think, with the characters. Mm-hmm. If I got what's come before that, establishing some of the characters, which unfortunately I've not read all of the Now Terminator series, so I don't know if any of these characters, like Patch or what was one of the other ones' names, started with an L, like Leif Erikson or some shit. I can't remember his name. It was like for something. I just remember there were a couple names that were being yelled out, like, oh, these must have been established characters at some point. I assume. I don't know.
Well,
sure.
the original series has Sarah Slammers and the big leader guy, Johnny O, which luckily we do not see anymore in this series. So hopefully all those characters bit the biscuit in this one.
Okay.
I see what you did there.
All right. Well, yeah, I had a good time. I mean, as always, I love, if it's a good comic, bad comic, as long as I got the chance to talk about it with you guys, that's really all I needed. So had a good time. This isn't like hooking me on the Terminator series, I can tell you that much, but for Alex's, having that glimpse of Alex Ross's first work and reading some of the history behind this series and what came to pass, it was interesting because we put Alex Ross on a pedestal here on this podcast. He's done some of the greatest art that we've covered on here.
Alex Ross is Kingdom Come, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
I bet you if you asked Alex Ross to sign this, he would shred it in front of you and piss on it.
I think this will bring our fun discussion of Terminator Burning Earth to a close. Plugs.
On behalf of Donna Martin and her ugly face, I would like to plug myself and Mr. Chris Sheehan, friend of the show's podcast that we do, Moratory Mondays, launching every Monday over on the Chris and Reggie network, chrisandreggie.com. See how I've tried to fit the network in there, but it didn't really work. Ham sandwich, everybody. You can find me over on the Twitter machine at Charlton_hero. And otherwise, I'm just waiting in limbo for Jesse and Mark to haul my lazy ass up and do another podcast. And that's me.
I got one for you. It was yesterday. You broadcasted with me yesterday at either 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, if you'll recall.
Oh, here we go with the time travel.
Crown Jewel.
Be ready, Chris Bailey.
Do you remember that?
I do. Yes, you are correct.
And then this Sunday at 10:30, you and and I guess just you and I don't know if anyone else is going to bother with this. I know Chris Sheehan doesn't watch anything outside of the WWE, and Jesse only watches what his friend steals for him. So it'll just be me and Bailey covering at 10:30 on Sunday night, 10:30 Eastern Standard Time, AEW Full Gear.
Yeah, baby.
And then all the boys are getting together, Jesse, you included. So it's the Sheehan, it's the Bailey, it's the Jesse. Tuesday, November 26th at 9 Eastern Standard Time, Survivor Series weekend. We got the War Games. We got the Survivor Series. Then we might fit a third one in there because we like to do things in either threes or ones, only odd numbers. So we'll see. But yeah, we got Crown Jewel already in the archive.
Already done.
Yep, time travel.
Crappy show, by the way. Crappy show.
It was great. I loved it. You guys did great.
Boy,
the best part was Tyson Fury.
old man pimp flair. I love that. That was my favorite part.
And then the 10th is AEW Full Gear, and then the 26th is Survivor Series weekend.
All right, Mark Radulich, what's the schedule, man?
Tomorrow on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network, this is a true network, that's right, a series of connected podcasts, many different. Damn You Hollywood, Source Material, Metal Hammer of Doom, some football fucking thing we've only got one show of. The whole deal, okay? A real network.
What about the most popular show, Unspoken Issues?
That's right.
We haven't talked about that.
That's right. It's a network. Damn You Hollywood will be reviewing Terminator Dark Fate. Jesse finally got to pick an album to review. Jesse, you've had quite a few in the past 2 months.
I'm a lucky man. You
and Robert Winfrey are starting to pick more stuff that you guys want to do on my network. I've lost control of the whole thing.
No. Oh, my. Oh, no.
This 1 or 2 shows you guys are picking topics for per month has gotten me quite anxious. I'm actually fanning myself as we speak.
Oh, he's got the sweats.
So you guys, I feel a coup is going to happen. Like you and Robert Winfrey are going to take over, and it really will become the Ham Sandwich Network.
Perfect. What is the album I picked? Which one is this?
As I Lay Dying, Shaped by Fire.
Oh yeah, dude.
There'll be an on trial on the 7th of November for 13 hours. I will actually not be prosecuting or defending. I will be judging that one. Andrew Graham will be prosecuting 13 hours. He has brought charges on this movie, so Sean will be defending, and a good time will be had by all. I'll be having the best time. I don't have to do much. As I said before, we'll have a TV party on the 10th for AEW Full Gear. And then we have an entire week dedicated to Stephen King. We're doing Stephen King's End on Source Material. I'm sure other people will be on the show, so I'll have to behave myself, so no roast beef vagina jokes. We'll be reviewing Dr. Sleep on Damn You Hollywood.
Roast beef vagina, not on the bingo card.
Another Jesse Starcher pick, Rum Ahoy, Time to Party. And there'll be an on trial for The Shining, where I think I'm going to prosecute that one just because everyone tells me it's a great movie. So I'm going to try to nitpick it to death. That's my job.
Okay, for Chris Bailey. And then Mark Radulich, I am Jesse Starcher. We will talk to you next Monday. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thank you all for joining us. Make sure to give that Radulich in Broadcasting Facebook page a like to stay up on top of all the great podcasts we have to offer. We are at home on Spreaker, but you can also find us on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, and recently we have hit the air on Spotify. Find your favorite podcast platform and type in RADULICH to subscribe for some great content. If you enjoyed this show, please feel free to share and spread the word. And as always, we appreciate any feedback and look forward to entertaining you again soon.
Some viewers may find the following disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
If you're not down with that, we got 2 words for you!
honestly, this whole book's going to take about 5 minutes to discuss, and the rest of it, Big Dick Buster.
Nobody knows
the trouble we've seen.
Patreon we have. It was porn in your face. Porn in your face. What you got there? Porn in your face. Started talking.
Good luck
about
fucking editing this.
And old Sarah and her nipples got to come back and take care of shit. We have special sections on Pornhub. You got to use the drop down.
I got completely thrown off by that.
I've silenced the Radulich.
All I can think about is old meaty vagina now. Look, who doesn't like a 10-minute hand job? I'm just saying. How are you enjoying our MC Escher approach to training? Fucking got her and the other person in the room to laugh their ass off at that. I got nothing from you two mooks. Okay,
what the fuck is an MC Escher?
Let's get back to hand jobs and zombies.
Yes, please. Language I can understand.
Screw MC Escher.
I thought he was a rapper. I was like, who the fuck is...
I did too. Yo, zombies and hand jobs, yo. Twitter can kiss my fucking ass.
I think a lot of it's going to be anxiety, like one of you motherfuckers are going to tweet Alex Ross.
It's happening. It is happening.
Alex Ross just kind of... all of a sudden, this shit just starts happening. He starts walking towards my house.
Did you guys get botted?
So speaking of Skynet, but...
Apparently the only one listening to our podcast was Skynet. And I'm always fucking selling. Always telling people about it, trying to sneak into any conversation. It's just like, I can't find my child. We talked about missing children on my podcast. Like, wait, what?
Yeah, while I'm sitting there at work and girls are asking me about my podcast, I'm like, don't fucking listen to it. All right, let's get the fuck out of here. All right, so...
You don't want me to tell more stories about my job or my idiots that I deal with on an ongoing basis?
I'm done, sir.
He's done. All right.
Alpha Flight sucks.
Poor Alpha Flight.
Oh my god! Oh my god! I have nothing to do with these people, please.
So
nothing. I say.
Because again, I think if it's one thing men can all agree on and be bonded with is the desire, secret or otherwise, to murder your wife.
Chris Bailey knows.
Oh my
Chris
god!
Bailey.
I don't know what's happening here. Listen. I thought she was 18. I love my wife. I don't know what's happening.
I thought she was 18. If you haven't thought about killing your wife, you're someone's beard.
Jesse Starcher, pull the plug.
He's got a whole calendar to go through. I can't stop him now. I'll look that up on Pornhub right here tonight. God. Okay. What the hell's a merkin?
Drop down old nipples under mature.
Look up roast beef vagina on Pornhub.
Oh, dude.
Like I was saying. Tell him I said bon appetit.
Literally in jail instead of like working at it.
No. These are all
after
jokes.
This podcast, you're done.
Jesse, are you ready for a poop tech party?
Is that on the drop down as well? Is there like a special section for that?
Oh,
I think they're all German Scheisse films. It's lovely.
This went downhill fast.
That it, Mark?
Have I offended everyone?
Man.
We're going to just go ahead and round up and say yes.
I have no idea who these people are.
Chris Bailey somehow made it on this podcast. I don't know how he got here.
I'm hostage in the basement. Help me.
Don't know who this guy is. I'm just getting his name from the Skype.
Hi, I'm Jay Farner, CEO of Quicken Loans. 30% of Americans who are planning home improvements of $5,000 or more will pay for those renovations with a high-interest credit card. That may not be a great idea. A better idea may be to take cash out of your home with a Quicken Loans 30-year fixed-rate mortgage. The rate today on our 30-year fixed-rate mortgage is 3.99%, APR 4.08%. Call us today at 800-QUICKEN or go to rocketmortgage.com.
Rate subject to change. Pay 1.25% fee to receive this discounted rate. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender. License in all 50 states. NMLS number 3030. 30.
Hi, I'm Jay Farner, CEO of Quicken Loans. 30% of Americans who are planning home improvements of $5,000 or more will pay for those renovations with a high-interest credit card. That may not be a great idea. A better idea may be to take cash out of your home with a Quicken Loans 30-year fixed-rate mortgage. The rate today on our 30-year fixed-rate mortgage is 3.99%, APR 4.08%. Call us today at 800-QUICKEN or go to rocketmortgage.com.
Rate subject to change. Pay 1.25% fee to receive this discounted rate. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender. License in all 50 states. NMLS number 3030.